Good morning, this is Makarov owner. I'm going to make another video here. This one is for 9x18 Makarov and it's for case trimming. So what I did, the difference between this one and the way I showed you before, I'm using the Lee Precision case trimmer with a pilot in 9x18 Makarov. And then I'm using my Shopsmith here with a 4-jaw chuck and the tailpiece with the regular drill chuck in it. And inside there's a piece of, I've cut a small section of 3/8 round bar, rod, whatever you want to call it. So it's going to set depth for me so that when the pilot goes in, it's going to act as my stop. And the reason that I'm doing this is I was using the other Lee method where you use the hand drill, or I would chuck up in my quill or what have you, and then you're doing all this by hand, and it's pretty labor intensive. And I'm finding after doing a little bit of research, this is a lot easier. Sorry, I just realized the light behind me is really glaring there. So anyway, I'll show you some differences real quick. I'm using a lot of aluminum cases because this is what I find, and honestly for what I'm doing they work fine. So let me find one that's pretty hashed here on the front end, and I'll show you. I'm still using those even if they are kind of beat up on the forward part. These have already been through the full-length sizer. Actually, this one is a pretty good example. It's not as bad as some, but if you look the front, the mouth of that is pretty bad. Let's see if I can tip it there. But it isn't going to matter because it's just going to get trimmed off. So for aluminum, I can actually just put them inside the chuck here and tighten it down by hand, and I don't have to worry about it. It cuts them off nice and clean without coming loose or anything like that. The brass, this cutter is actually kind of beyond the point that I should be using for the brass. The cutters don't hold up to brass for very long, in my opinion. You end up going through quite a few of those, whereas with aluminum, the cutter can be beyond the point where it's really good for brass, but it's still nice and clean for aluminum. So I'll just give you an example of how this works. Don't want to take too much time doing this. I've got like 1,000 or 1,500 of these to do, and so I wanted to increase my speed because this is really not, it's very monotonous and gets kind of boring to say the least. So anyway, just lock down by hand and turn the machine on and run the quill forward. It just goes in to stop, and then I can unlock it by hand and go for the next one, and that's that one with a hash front. And it'll just work its way right in there. These have already been deprimed and they've been sized, and they still need to go. Even if the mouth is a little bit out of round, it doesn't matter because we still have to go into the expander to be able to seat the bullet, so it's going to round it out even then. And even though it's been through the sizer for the Makarov, since these were 9mm Luger, the base of the shell is actually going to end up narrower than the front where the bullet seats. So it's kind of the different taper. I mean, on a rifle cartridge, it'd be skinny forward and then fatter on the ass to be able to come out. And these are actually opposite. They're skinny on the ass and wider on the front. But they work just fine. Most of these aluminum, when we do these, we're going to lose most of these. So the reason I think that it's worth doing the aluminum is they're so much faster. It takes a lot less time, and I find a lot of these. My brass really doesn't cost me anything to be able to do them. So I can buy regular brass nowadays for, I don't know, $20 for like 1,000 of them, plus freight at some places for used brass. Now listen to what the difference is. You heard the other one's cut aluminum. Now listen to the brass. Yeah, that's a hell of a difference, and it kind of mashes in kind of flattens the front lips on that, and so I have to go through and deburr inside and outside, which is going to be a little more of a job. I'll do another brass one here, then I'll do another aluminum, and you can see the difference. I looked at some other trimmers, and I was considering doing the other lead trimmer, the power trimmer that you put into your press, and I think that system looks pretty interesting. It looks a little awkward though in comparison to doing this. I like that this is down and horizontal like this, and I can just drop straight in. I'll still have to go back and deburr, but okay, it's fine with me. See how nice and clean and easy that is. It's fast. It's a lot faster than if I screw around locking that collar down and then pushing into them, which I've done a video where we did that, but this is a lot easier. And I just thought so basically I kind of did the workaround where I have a power trimmer basically using stuff that I already have rather than having to go buy. If you do the lease setup, you're going to need a special die specific to caliber, plus you need the cutter. And at some point I might end up buying it anyway, but I don't necessarily want to spend that at this point. And honestly, that seems a little awkward anyway, because I'm a right-hander. I got a single stage press, so it's not multi-staged. So it'd be another press setup, and then I'm going to be like having to do my power up here and my arm bringing it up in order to bring the case up in order to trim. And I suppose that's okay, but honestly I think this is probably just as easy, and it's pretty quick. It seems to me like it'd be a lot less awkward to do this, and like I say, for me, I already had these parts because I was already using this system anyway, which was, Lee, and it's actually the least expensive power way to do it. And then, I'm already using the tailstock with chuck and all that stuff. I just didn't realize that I could hold the shell like this, and then I could cut a piece of rod to go in here as the stop. And so that's really the real difference. And honestly, I want to thank the other guys for YouTube. I'm not going to tell you people's names just because, I looked at probably 50 videos. And one of the guys, at least one of the guys, was talking about using a stop like this in the case. Not using a chuck like this, the four-jaw. What they were doing was basically wrestling it by hand, kind of like I was doing, but kind of reversing it, where you would have the casing, turning, and then run the pilot in. I was doing the opposite. It equals the same thing, but this way it's all lined up, it's fully in control, and I think it's so much easier. I mean, just look at this. I'm done. It's pretty easy. We'll do one more and then we're going to end the video. But that's about it. That's all I wanted to show. So anyway, have a good day. Bye.